All right, everyone, we're going to get started. First of all, I want to thank you all for joining us. When I scheduled this webinar, realizing it's March 17th, I think a lot of people celebrate St. Patrick's Day. So if you do, I will be brief and I'll get to the point. I also noted in our last webinar, if you participated, we do post the recordings of these webinars to our website. It does take a little bit longer than 48 hours I had mentioned in the email. Our communications department has to approve the recordings, so we will post those as soon as they're available. So as you can see, as I stare at this beautiful picture of UNE's campus, I'm reminded of warmer days and they're coming. So thank you for joining us. As anyone knows, if you participated before, this series of informational presentations is designed for new students and families. We typically get a combination of both the student and their parents participating. So again, we welcome you. We hope that this process and this presentation is informational, get your questions answered. I want to emphasize some of the information does repeat itself, and there's a method to that, in that it is sequential in nature. So our next webinar is going to be about loans, and we'll dig real deep into loans. So you may see a few of these slides that you've seen previously. If you have any specific questions to your students' specific financial aid award, give our office a call because we can go over it in detail. We are a full service unit. So we're going to get started. And if you haven't met Mike and I, Mike is behind the scenes. He is answering questions. So if you have a question, you can put it into the Q&A. He's our director of tuition planning and systems here. And I'm one of our associate directors. I do tuition planning, and I also help with student service. So again, thanks for joining Mike and I. I am a parent of a few undergraduates currently, so I'm kind of in the middle of all this, completing FAFSAs and making sure financial aid is correct. So for some reason, I seem to be the right person at the right moment to do these types of presentations. So I just want to go over the outline of this presentation. We're going to do three sort of categories. One is going to be student contributions. How do students help with this process? How do they help pay for college? And then we'll move to the parent. We know parents obviously are a very big part of this process. And so I'll cover, again, an overview of how parents contribute. And then lastly, I'll go into a combination of the student-parent contribution, and that's really focused mostly on loans. All right, so let's see. So it does bear to repeat, because I've done this in the past. What is the net cost? What will this cost you? Because that is the amount that you're going to be billed, and that amount is going to help you determine how much you have to pay after all of the financial aid is applied. This is obviously an example of a student who has UNE gift aid, which is scholarships and federal aid, plus student loans, which is called self-help aid. Remember, don't deduct your federal work study when you're trying to determine how much you will owe to come up with the cost. And so this example is telling you that with this example, the amount that's needed to be funded is $26,130. And we bill twice a year. So we're going to bill that in the fall, and then we'll bill that in the spring. Okay, so you get the opportunity to split in half. So moving on, I know it's probably a surprise to see the FAFSA screen up here, but the reason I included this is because this is the student's way of contributing to their college education. It's the way they can assist with their college costs. And so we strongly recommend that everyone file a FAFSA. You're never obligated to accept the funding, but at least they become an option as you're putting your plans in place. You have nothing to lose, again, to complete a FAFSA. And the second screen about FAFSA, oops, sorry about that, is, believe it or not, you're going to be doing this every year. So a couple of things, again, just as a reminder, FAFSA does have a helpline. They are available. You can file as early as October 1st. This year, you had to use your 2019 tax information, but remember, next year, the FAFSA always uses 2 years prior tax information. I would say, now that you're a pro in financial aid, 30 minutes to 40 minutes is a good time frame. And then always use those little help bubbles that are next to questions. I don't know if parents or students know that, but there is so much information in those help bubbles. So After a student completes their financial aid, they're going to get their award letter. This is a sample that we went over in the last webinar. And so again, this is the academic scholarship. So the student, through their hard work in high school, that is their contribution. They have been awarded for their hard work, their high school performance. It's translated essentially into college funding. And then any other need-based fund that they're eligible for. And again, as well as that federal work study. If they're offered federal work study, this is a great chance for them to contribute to their education. So what are the advantages of federal student loans? I really want to go over these loans in a little bit more detail, because this is one of the most frequently asked questions that we get. Parents ask me about what are the federal loans that students can get. The federal government has capped for first-year students a total of $5,500 in federal loans that they can be awarded without a cosigner. The difference is you have a subsidized federal direct loan and an unsubsidized federal direct loan. And as you can see on the screen, subsidized really means that the government is paying the interest rate while the student is in school. And then unsubsidized is not based on need, and the interest does accrue once the loan pays out to the student's account. We really highly recommend using these loans if you are rate sensitive and you're going to look at a private lender. Remember, the current rate is fixed this year at 2.75. There are some phenomenal repayment options when a student graduates. They can also defer a loan or put it in forbearance if they have a specific situation. And so these loans are good loans, and they are in deferment while the student is enrolled, and they get a 6-month grace period. So they do get a grace period before they have to enter into repayment. So again, this is definitely a good loan to consider. And one of the things I want to mention, because I'm kind of a lone person and I like the fine print sometimes, but if you go to studentaid.gov, the federal government has spent, I think it's over a year, revamping the website. And this is where you're going to go to obtain your FSA ID, where you actually go to apply for a FAFSA, where students have to go to complete some of their loan requirements. This is a phenomenal website full of a ton of information, not just on loans, but on scholarships and grants. So if you have time, I really recommend that you take a look at the studentaid.gov website. So another way students contribute to their college education is by starting the search for scholarships as early as they can. I actually just got off the phone with a parent, and they're way ahead of the game. They're definitely coming to UNE, which is great. They're going to deposit, and the student is already looking for outside scholarships. And she asked me this question: if my son or daughter gets an outside scholarship, what is your policy? Our policy is we will not reduce any UNE aid unless the student exceeds their need. And that's only happened, I think, one time, and we reduced their loans. So again, outside scholarships will not reduce the UNE gift aid. It's only in the rare instance where these scholarships are so large that we would have to make room for them, and it's very rare. So it's a good thing to have an outside scholarship. This is just a screenshot of some of the scholarship information that we offer on our website. What I would recommend is to go to UNE's website, look at these different search engines. I'll be honest with you, if you sign up for them, the student is going to get a lot of emails, because they're going to send you emails based on your profile. What did you input that the student was interested in? What's their major? Where are they located? So you want to maybe get on one or two and start the process as early as you can. It does take a lot of perseverance. It takes a lot of time, but it's worth it, because if you get one or two a year, it does help with the overall cost. We also have an updated list of scholarships that we get from different organizations, and we also list them on the website. And so just really quickly, some tips on applying. I would say dedicate some time every week. Put together a folder of your essays on your desktop. Use those search engines. Go for the small ones. You don't have to always go for those large scholarships, because there are lots of small ones. Also, you should be in touch with your guidance office at your high school and make sure you're on any type of list that they send out to graduating seniors with applications. Be organized, that always helps. And then what's my other tip? And then follow up, make sure you follow up with that organization to see that they received it, and if there is a deadline, what that is. And again, here's our website for more information on applying for scholarships. So one of the things I want to mention, these two slides, I think there's two of them that are related to student work. We are seeing more and more students contribute to their college education by working. And so in this example, what we have is a student who in the summer works about 35 hours a week, making, let's say, $11 an hour. And then during the school year, making, you know, eight hours a week, making a certain amount of money. If you look at the total earnings that a student can make over the year, this would help a student not to have to borrow for those things such as personal expenses, you know, spending money, because they will need a little bit of spending money, their books and supplies. So we really promote responsible borrowing and keeping debt down. So I just use that as an example, but I have a meeting actually scheduled with a student who is a UNE tour guide. He makes payments every fall and spring. They're not large, they're $1,000 I think each semester, but he's doing that over the course of his 4 years. So it really does help. And again, how do we reduce, you know, debt? Well, this is an example of if a student was able to, you know, put $5,000 a year. Now I know this is a lot, but still, even if it's less than that, even half, they are reducing their overall loan payment and also interest. So again, work is just one of those ways that we are seeing more and more, you know, students do to keep their debt down. So a little bit less in their monthly payment. And then the last thing I want to mention, because we may get some questions about the work study program, and I'll kind of go into that in future webinars, but work study is a phenomenal program. And if a student wasn't awarded work study, they can contact our office to see if they're eligible, or they can also look for some non-work study jobs on campus. This is up on the screen really because obviously students are earning money, but you know, employers are really looking for that job experience. And so for a student to have a phenomenal work study job, they're getting work skills, they're meeting other students. It's just another way to be social. We really have a great work study program here on campus. And we actually instituted an app that's called Handshake that started last year. So these students are all on their phones, they download an app and they search for jobs on the app. So it's really, we've really streamlined the process and made it much easier for students, not just for work study jobs, but for those other jobs I was referring to that are not work study. Oh, there it is, my little employment during college, how important that is. So, okay, so we're gonna move into parent contributions. So let's start to cover that. I wanna mention briefly, we're gonna be going really green. UNE has such a green initiative happening, as most college campuses are. Our billing portal is called Touchnet. So that's where the parent gets access, the student gives them access, and that's where you are going to find your bills, where you can enroll in the payment plan. You can download PDFs and put them, you know, into a statement. You can archive them. So Touchnet is where the parent is going to go and get their information on the student's bill. And I highly recommend that students give parents access. And on the screen, you can see students give parents access to this portal through their student portal called UOnline. Okay, so you will get an email and set up your login credentials. And I do want to mention, I know this is always a surprise to parents, we actually can still take a paper check, and we have a lockbox located in Vermont. So mailed payments can go to this address and we post them and process them daily. So don't be surprised when you see that on some of the information that you receive. UNE does have a payment address in Vermont. So I want to go over the tuition payment plan, and I want to say before I do, I will cover this in a lot of depth, I think in the next webinar as well as the subsequent one, because we do get a lot of questions about the payment plan. First of all, it is $25 to enroll, so you'll have to pay a $25 setup fee. That's very reasonable. You do have to enroll in the tuition payment plan in both the fall and the spring. What you're seeing on the screen is a sign up by month and the number of payment plan payments available to you. So I'm going to interpret that. June is a busy month for seniors especially. So let's say you get your first bill, life gets busy and you forget to sign up. That's okay. You can sign up in July, but you will not have 6 payments available. You'll have to split the balance due by 5 payments, okay? And so as you go through the months, you'll see you can sign up in August, but you now have only 4 payments available, not 6. And really what that translates to is your payments are going to be a little bit bigger the later you sign up. And you'll note that spring has a shorter billing cycle. So when you get billed in December, you'll have 5 payments. The nice thing about the spring bill is that if you've done a loan, the spring bill is almost covered because you've made payment arrangements by applying for a loan to cover the full year. 529 plans or investment plans. The one thing I can say about these plans is really what you want to do right now is check with your financial planner on how you access these funds. I think it's important also to mention that you want to speak with them if there are any tax implications and what's best for you and your financial accounts. Also, each company, as I had mentioned, does have a different way of handling the funds. Many of them will send a paper check. If they do, you want to give them the student ID and ask them what their time frame is, like how long between you requesting the funds and the school getting the payment. I think that's one of the most important questions to ask your advisor at this stage. And so now we're going to go into a different option, which is the third one, student and parent contributions. And this obviously is going to be all about loans. So I do want to talk about the cost of attendance because that's a little bit different than what I had talked about earlier, which is the your direct costs. So we had covered this in a previous webinar, but I just want to bring everything up so that everyone has an idea of how loans work. Students have direct costs. Those are what you get billed. The indirect costs are things like books, supplies, transportation. That equals the cost of attendance. We're not going to bill you for things like books, but the reason this exists is so that a student or their parent can borrow the maximum loan if they wish to cover things like books through a refund. And so that's something to remember when you're looking at your maximum loan amount, to consider that. And really what I would recommend, when you get that first bill, give our office a call and we can go over this with you. We can go over what your maximum loan amount would be, how refunds work, how to get a student set up for direct deposit. Okay, so I just want to bring up the cost of attendance again, because I think it's really important to note that it's a little different than the other screen, but sometimes parents and students do borrow the maximum loan amount to cover those things that we mentioned here. And we say borrow the minimum. I love this slide because I love the students carrying the canoe, but again, we're conservative. We want undergraduate students to come out of here with as little debt as possible. And so, they don't really need a lot in refunds because their housing and food is covered. And so borrowing the minimum is what we recommend. This is another repeat slide and I won't go over it too much because I think this will now be the third time, and it just bears to mention that we have your federal Parent Plus loan, and you can see the rate right now is a fixed low 5.3%. The thing I want to mention about private loans is most often we're seeing the student as the borrower and the parent as the cosigner, but more and more lenders are now offering a loan product for just the parent. So keep that in mind. Private loans have a lot of different positive attributes. And if a parent wants to take on the debt, there are lenders out there that will do the private parent loan. So what I want to bring up too is UNE's recommended lender list, and my little red arrow is indicative of a filter. So this is what you're going to see when you log in to, or when you go onto our website. We have one more lender too on the list. What I would do personally at this stage, you can't apply for a loan because your credit will expire and rates are going to be all over the place. And the reason they will be all over the place, if you will, is because that loan application is going to be based on your credit score, your debt to income. So my personal advice would be click on each lender's link here and read their website, look at their products, maybe give them a call. We recommend these lenders because they went through an RFI process, meaning we vetted them. You do not have to use them. If you have a local credit union that is willing to give you a loan with a rate that you are really happy with, I would say go with them. This is simply just a resource of information. So just keep that in mind. You are not bound to use these lenders, but again, my recommendation, I like to read all the fine print. I'm just one of those people. Look at the lender's website and give them a call and see how what they recommend for you. I want to bring this one up here. It's got a lot of different things that are going to pop up, but this slide will appear in our loan webinar, but I'll just go over it really quickly because a lot of parents ask, what is the process like? And I think what I would do is use the analogy of the FAFSA. So think of it that way. You're going to go online and you're going to choose the type of loan that you want to apply for, okay? You're going to apply online to that lender. And when I mean type of loan, whether it's a fixed or a adjustable rate loan, the lender is going to then give you a credit decision. Typically, lenders take 24 to 48 hours. What I would do is make sure that lender does not want additional information from you. Sometimes they want a pay stub or a W-2. So when you get your credit decision, read it carefully so that you are sure it's an approval or not a pending pre-approval. And so after you get your credit decision, we will download that approved application, much like we do your FAFSA, and we certify the loan. That's the language that we use. So you've got the loan approval, we certify it, meaning we match it up to the student's account, we process it on that student's account so that you will then see the loan disperse as a credit to the student's account. So again, what I would say is, really important, get that Touchnet access because that way you can see when the loan will appear on the student's account. The one thing I can say is most parents don't apply until they get their bill. When it's a busy season, when we first send out bills, the process could take 7 to 10 business days, but as long as we have your loan approval, we know that the bill is satisfied. And this is when it's our busy time of year in the summer. You'll give us a call, we'll confirm we have your loan. So don't hesitate to do that. But I think it's worth having this up on the screen just to see the loan process. And FERPA, good old FERPA, I actually talked about FERPA tonight with a parent. FERPA stands for the Federal Educational Rights and Privacy Act. So colleges are required, regardless of the student's age at the time of enrollment. I know that sounds a little crazy if you have a 17-year-old like I did last year, but the student has to complete that authorization for us to speak with you once they are enrolled. So right now we can talk with you because they're not an enrolled student. So this form is found in the student's portal, UOnline. When you call the office, what we'll do is we'll confirm your identity. We'll ask for the last 4 of your social, and we can discuss the student's account. The other thing I want to say is if we don't have a student's FERPA on file, that's okay. We can remind the student, and then once they do that, we'll be able to talk with you. I mentioned FERPA, I think, in every single webinar moving forward, so you'll hear that from me a lot. Speaking of upcoming webinars, I don't want to repeat myself, but we definitely have one next month. So that's the college loan option one. I think these two are probably our most important ones because the deposit and beyond is that sort of what do I do now webinar. So keep in mind that I'll send an email invitation if you're interested. And you can actually also go back to that email that I sent you for this webinar for the link to the other webinars. Stay in touch with us. We love hearing from you. I had to correct the word virtual. I misspelled it on the last webinar, which I thought was pretty funny. Someone pointed that out to me, so thank you for that. I would say best way to reach us, really use email, but if you want to speak to someone, this is a great time to get that one-on-one. We also are doing Wednesday evening appointments, so you can schedule a one-on-one either with myself or anyone else here in the office. So we are just about at the end. This is our Q&A portion of the program, but I don't see that we have any other, we had 4 questions, so I think that I think all these questions were answered. So that looks like we're done. So again, I want to thank all of you for joining. I know it's a busy time and you probably want to get to your dinner. So thank you so much again. And we look forward to hearing from you.